Since the finale of its release all the way back in 2014, the second arc of Wizard 101 has long been controversial in the eyes of many players. By the end of Khrysalis Part 2, players had to trudge through a grueling 878 total quests, which easily amounted to over 1,000 quests if you include doing all of the world side content. People on the internet have been crying out for changes to the second arc, making Azteca and Khrysalis' total quest count shorter, lowering the HP bars of many of the bosses, getting rid of many annoying cheats and spells. The list continues. Kingsisle has had over 10 years of time, 2 arcs of worlds, and many other side content releases, including entire guilds and raids, and still nothing changes. Why? In today's video, we're going to be dissecting the entire second arc of Wizard 101, the motives behind why this arc remains the longest in Wizard 101's history. Before we start with today's video, I'm going to put an obvious, although needed, story content spoiler warning in case you have not yet made it to the end of Arc 2, as I will be going in depth about each world's story and progression. Let's get into it. Before we even get started with the second arc, I think it's appropriate that we have to start at the beginning, the first arc. Arc 1 in its totality has 351 quests, which is over half the amount of Arc 2's. Before we get to complaining, I think it's important to note that this amount of quests, and importantly the length of the worlds in Arc 1, are extremely appropriate. Arc 1 of Wizard 101, and many MMOs for that matter, are supposed to be the player's introduction to the game. How the flow of combat is, how to piece together different spells to make other spells more powerful, etc. You literally cannot go more than like 4 to 8 levels in the earlier game without receiving a notification from your professor that you have a new spell ready to learn, and this is all for good reason. In the early game, you need spell variety in order to complete combat. Strictly speaking from a new player experience, so without all of the extra like quad damage pets that people have, you need to have shields, heals, weaknesses, traps, blades, dispels, all of these to even complete the most basic of combat. Arc 1 purposefully is designed to not feel too challenging to allow the player to learn the ropes of the game. Arc 2 is where things begin to get a little bit interesting. The very first world in Arc 2, Celestia, gives players access to the astral schools of magic, those being the star, sun, and moon schools, each of which augmenting your wizard spells to aid you in combat. And yes, even the moon school, if it was designed correctly, was supposed to do this. For the very first time in the game, you and your wizard begin to learn that there are ways to upgrade your spells beyond simply slapping a blade on yourself and a feint onto the enemy. You are able to enchant your spell cards, giving them extra damage, accuracy, or pierce. You can add a new aura to yourself, enhancing your combat capabilities, or recently a negative or harmful aura to the enemy to further weaken them. You can transform your entire spell deck into that of another creature with the moon transformations, giving you variety in combat and offering versatility when and where it is needed. Coming in at 95 total quests, Celestia is an extremely smooth and well-paced world in my opinion, not too difficult, not too long, and relatively exciting. The world of Celestia, while yes, providing an introduction to the second arc's antagonist Morganthe, also provided a unique twist and break in the monotonous and cyclical combat experience that players would have thus far potentially experienced. Zafaria is the second world in Arc 2, and this is where I feel like the story writers needed an extra world and decided to throw in this one. The entire premise of Zafaria is that you need to save a group of missing students, including the professor and a missing Zafarian prince. Much like Celestia, you do not even get to see Morganthe until the Elephant Graveyard, which is at the end of the world, although her name and influence does get brought up a lot more, with even some of her shadow creatures getting to roam the streets more frequently. In Zafaria, you do get to learn the Colossal Enchant card, which is an upgrade to your Damage Enchant prior, alongside the final Accuracy and Pierce Enchant card, but other than that, no new combat engines or combat strategies are particularly introduced in this world. Coming in at around 148 quests, Zafaria does sometimes tend to drag on, especially with the Greyhorn mercenaries, but otherwise has really smooth visuals, bright colors, and interesting characters, so thus the world doesn't feel too bland or too grudging to get through. Avalon is the second arc's third world, and this is where the second arc really starts to lose a lot of its value for me. Avalon has a total quest count of 161, which is only 13 greater than its predecessor, but somehow still seems to drag on for a lot longer. From one standpoint, Avalon nearly doubles the amount of bosses you need to defeat, going from 24 in Zafaria to 43, and boss fights ostensibly will take longer than regular mob fights. From another standpoint, this is the beginning of Wizard101's notorious back and forth problem that it has specifically in the second arc. After you reach Caerleon and prior to getting to the Outer Yard, you arrive at the Wild, the Weird, and Dundara. All of these three places require you almost equally to go back to one of the aforementioned places, or even all the way back to the literal beginning of Avalon in the Caliburn, Abbey Road, or Caerleon. You genuinely have no idea, aside from if you look up a guide on it, how much progress you are making with this world, given that you need to backtrack your steps in almost every other quest that you do. One person forgets something in their home, another needs you to fetch a pail of water from a specific lake. It literally becomes so repetitive and unintuitive to complete at some point. One argument as a proponent for Zafaria is that you at least get to learn a new enchant and new astral aura magic if you so wish, but in Avalon, everything seems to be so much more difficult. You are at a weird crossroad where you are not high enough level yet for a gear upgrade or a spell upgrade, or for that matter a combat engine upgrade. You are still stuck using your blades, auras, and 7-pip AoE spells for the majority of combat, all the while mobs are getting a lot stronger, the bosses acquiring more HP and cheats, and the quests getting longer and longer. To put the cherry on top, the entire reason you need to come to Avalon is to acquire the Sword of Kings, an alleged powerful weapon that you will need, in the words of Merle Ambrose and many people in Avalon, to defeat Morganthe and the Shadows. The Sword of Kings is one of the most laughable pieces of gear they give to the player. Of all the things that they have buffed in the past or have made changes on, I still have no clue why they don't change this one specific story-relevant item. The Sky Iron Hosta from over 40 levels prior to the acquisition of the Sword of Kings still outshines it, as the sword provides 0 extra damage stat to your character. You literally leave Avalon with nothing better to your character. Sure, you help out the entire world and rid it of the Pendragon, but you are no closer in your own quest to stop Morganthe from literally rewriting the entire spiral. Can you tell I just went through this quest for my Solo Balance series? And then we get to Azteca. If I had to guess as to why the skip world elixirs were created in Wizard101, Azteca would probably be my #1 reason and guess as to why. Azteca is home to 197 quests, 57 boss fights, and some of the most intrusive, irritating, and grating quests across the game. If you thought the going back and forth experience was bad in Avalon, oh boy, have you got a big storm coming with Azteca. I'm just going to rip the band-aid off with this one. The entire story of Azteca is literally pointless. You end up losing to Morganthe in the end, as she is able to learn the Song of Creation and crashes down the comet Xibalba into the planet. Almost 197 quests later, hours of time spent later, and you do literally nothing for this world. It is beyond painful to complete this world and have that be the outcome of it. One of the few, and I mean few, positives of this world is that it is home to new upgrades for your wizard, namely in the form of Sharpened Blade, Potent Trap, and even the new damage aura spells that they made. It is very timely for Kingsisle to include these upgrades in Azteca, because without them, I'm not too sure how many players would actually willingly get through this world. Bosses commonly having above 20,000 HP, even pushing 30,000 and above, some even with hefty cheats and annoying stun spells. Earthquake is all too common. On top of this, Azteca is home to some of the most dingy, unlit, and ugly places across the spiral. The entire areas of the Tierra de Brie and the Pitch Black Lake are literally so bland and uncolorful, and the same goes for the cenote with a similar vibe. The story is poorly written, some of the areas are extremely hard to look at, the mobs, especially coming from Avalon, are way too difficult, and fights end up dragging on forever it seems. All of these are popular reasons as to why Azteca is such a miserable experience to go through. But don't worry, if you thought this world was bad, allow me to introduce Khrysalis. To this day, Khrysalis is the longest world in the entire game, and it was created over a decade ago, totaling at 277 whole entire quests. This world is definitely one for the books. I will say, as a positive, Khrysalis is genuinely a well-designed and cohesive world, as opposed to his predecessor. The colors are bright, the nature is extremely vibrant and green, the water is well textured and thorough. Even the Sardonyx, which in my opinion is more dim and has a more somber tone, is a very well thought through and lively location in Khrysalis. You even get to meet extremely well put together and likable characters like Zaltana and Divim. If you put the quest length aside, the world of Khrysalis is honestly one of my favorites to this day. However, that is if you can put the quest length aside. The main argument I will see people say is that when Khrysalis first came out, the world was made into 2 parts and was expected to be experienced as such. People had to wait a year for the second part to come out, and thus the world did not nearly feel as long and as tedious to get through. And for the most part, I can totally see where this argument is coming from and is totally valid. I'm willing to bet for the most part, however, that people have played more than one Wizard since then, or just simply did not play Wizard 101 during the time when Khrysalis only housed Part 1. Khrysalis Part 2 is genuinely such an enjoyable experience. It sets up the story for Arc 3 nicely, the wizard learns more about shadow magic and its origins, but I will say the conclusion of Morganthe as a character, after all of the build-up prior, feels extremely underbaked and anticlimactic. You mean to tell me one of the strongest people in the spiral as we knew it meets their demise by simply breaking glass and falling into the abyss? That is extremely unsatisfying of a conclusion, in my opinion. Especially all the player had to do to get through that point, seeing Morganthe and the end of this extremely powerful entity as we knew it was just vastly unsatisfying in my opinion. So, after all is said and done, why won't Kingsisle ever change the length of Arc 2 despite the constant criticism of its worlds? In my opinion, one of the big morals of the story for Arc 2 is that you cannot save everybody. You surely help out the different worlds, you save the lost Zafarian prince from the Shadow Queen, you restore Avalon to a land of peace and one with its king returned, but think of the end of Khrysalis. You, the wizard yourself, free Grandfather Spider from his prison in the depths of a random pit. Despite doing your absolute best effort trying to halt one evil, the Shadow Queen, you, unbeknownst to yourself at the same time, also unleash another great evil into the spiral, which perpetuates and begins the journey you must embark on for Arc 3. I think the original goal when the developers created Arc 2 was that they wanted to set up an intense story of struggle and helplessness. A storyline derived from the fact that even though you are powerful and you know a lot of good magic, you cannot help everybody. You literally claw your way through each of the worlds, trying to scrape together information about the Shadow Queen, where she is headed to next and how to stop her, all the meanwhile trying to help out the locals in the world and solve their own crises that way. Despite the warnings of numerous prominent characters, including everyone from the Council of Light and Grandmother Raven herself, you must indulge in the teachings of shadow magic, as it is one of the few ways your wizard learns it will be able to better deal with Morganthe. In doing so, however, yes, you learn more about how to stop the Shadow Queen, but also you make an enemy of yourself with Grandmother Raven, as she no longer trusts you after you have learned shadow magic. I think if they made Arc 2 any shorter, this feeling of both insane accomplishment for defeating Morganthe and regret for unleashing Grandfather Spider would not be as powerful as a message. You had to endure all of Azteca, the back and forth of Avalon, the defeat of Divim and many of your companions, all for you to have this feeling of hopelessness. Ultimately, I feel as if it perfectly segues itself into Arc 3, which, as we all know, became a total reset as far as quest length, XP gain, mob health, and overall enjoyment. Thank you for watching today's video. Please make sure to subscribe, like, and comment, and I will see you around the spiral. Bye-bye!